Welcome to Lifespan, the weekly podcast that digs up the dirt on the most outrageous, chaotic, and downright WTF lives ever lived, all told in a fun and fascinating way. Share, rate, and follow the show for more wild stories. Today we're embarking on a truly bizarre journey into one of history's most captivating and, frankly, perplexing mysteries. The man in the iron mask. Forget what you learned in school. This is history's unhinged side.
It really is. And for everyone listening, we've gathered some of the most compelling accounts, the wildest theories about this incredible story from 17th century France. This all happened under the reign of the very flamboyant Sun King, Louis XIV. You shared some amazing sources on this enigma, and our mission on this bizarre journey is really to unpack the juiciest bits.
Absolutely, and try to figure out why this story still hooks us centuries later.
Exactly.
We're diving deep into the world of Versailles, pure opulence, but also the absolute power Louis XIV had, and those shadowy corners where secrets could just get buried for decades.
Prepare yourselves. It's a story so strange. It feels like it has to be fiction, but maybe not entirely.
Okay, so let's kick off this bizarre journey. We need to set the scene, right? The reign of Louis XIV, the Sun King. I feel like understanding his world is absolutely crucial to even imagining how a masked prisoner could be a thing.
Oh, completely. You can't grasp the mystery without understanding Louis XIV's era. He reigned for ages, 1643 to 1715, and his whole deal was absolute power. You know that famous phrase, "L'État, c'est moi."
I am the state, yeah.
Right, and he wasn't kidding. That was basically his operating principle. He worked really hard to centralize power, pull it away from the nobility who'd always been potential rivals.
How did he manage that, though, practically speaking?
Well, a couple of key ways. He appointed these royal officials, intendants, to run the provinces, loyal directly to him, and he got a firm grip on the French church, too. It was systematic.
And Versailles. You can't talk about Louis XIV without talking about Versailles. It wasn't just a fancy house, was it? More like a strategy.
Precisely. Versailles was the ultimate symbol, yes, but it was also a brilliantly crafted tool. More than a palace, it was a stage.
A stage.
Yeah, for this incredibly elaborate court life. He basically forced the high nobility to live there, under his roof, under his eye.
So he could keep tabs on them.
Keep tabs, keep them busy with etiquette and jockeying for favor, reliant on him. It stopped them building up their own power bases back home. It was genius in a ruthless sort of way.
A gilded cage, you could say. Control wrapped up in luxury. And this whole divine right of kings thing, he really bought into that, didn't he? That God personally picked him.
Oh, absolutely. He firmly believed his authority came directly from God.
Yeah.
It justified his absolute power, not just to himself, but ideally to everyone else too. And he used everything, art, architecture, propaganda, to build this image, this radiant God-like persona, the Sun King.
It paints a picture of just immense power, almost total control. But surely there were downsides. All that spending, the wars, I remember reading it put a huge strain on France.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't all sunshine and glory. His foreign policy led to incredibly expensive wars, one after another. And yeah, building and maintaining Versailles, the sheer extravagance, it cost a fortune. France's finances were seriously strained, and that definitely created underlying tensions that would, cause problems later on.
Okay. But even with all this power, was there anything that could put the brakes on him? Any institutions that could theoretically push back?
Well, he aimed for absolute control, but it wasn't entirely unchecked. There were institutions like the parliament. They were essentially high courts.
Right.
They could technically object to royal edicts, sort of register protests. But in practice, Louis usually found ways to pressure them or override them. Their power was limited.
And the society itself was incredibly rigid, right? The three estates. That structure must have played a role in how secrets, especially about identity, were handled.
Totally. French society was strictly layered. Clergy first, then nobility, then everyone else, the third estate.
And the first two had all the perks.
Exactly. Privileges, tax exemptions, while the third estate carried most of the burden. In that kind of system where status is everything, secrets about who you really were could be explosive. Plus, think about Versailles again. That whole court environment with the king manipulating everyone. It was a breeding ground for secrets, intrigue, hidden agendas.
And crucially, the king had the power to just disappear people, lock them up without a trial.
Yes, that's a key piece here. The justice system gave the monarch immense power, including the lettre de cachet.
Ah, the sealed letters.
Right, royal warrants that basically allowed imprisonment without any trial, any due process, indefinitely.
Wow.
And you had infamous prisons like the Bastille, of course, but also others like Pignerol, Aix, Ile Sainte-Marguerite, places where inconvenient people could be stashed away. Secret imprisonment wasn't just possible, it was a tool the monarchy used to silence critics, hide scandals, or maybe hide a person whose very existence was a problem.
Okay, that context is chilling, actually. It really sets the stage for how something as bizarre as a permanently masked prisoner could happen. So let's get to the man himself. When does he first actually appear in the records?
The first solid piece of evidence we have pops up in July 1669. It's a letter.
A letter. From who?
From the Marquis de Louvois, who was Louis XIV's Minister of War. It was sent to a man named Benin d'Auvergne de Saint-Marc.
And who is Saint-Marc?
He was the governor of the prison at Pignerol, one of those state prisons we mentioned. The letter gave him very specific instructions about a new prisoner arriving named Eustache Dogger.
And I gather these instructions weren't standard procedure. They were pretty intense.
Oh, extremely intense. The letter specified that Dogger's cell needed multiple doors, basically to make eavesdropping impossible.
Wow.
And Dogger himself was told very clearly that if he ever tried to talk about anything other than his basic everyday needs, he'd be killed on the spot.
Killed. Just for talking. But here's the part that always gets me. The real WTF moment in that early evidence. Louvois described this guy, Dogger, as only a valet.
Exactly. Only a valet. Why on earth would a simple servant warrant that level of secrecy? Multiple doors, death threats. It makes no sense.
Right. It just screams that something else is going on.
It really does. It points to one of two things, doesn't it? Either that description, valet, was completely false, a cover, or this valet knew something incredibly dangerous, information so sensitive it threatened the state itself.
And did this weird situation just fly under the radar, or did people notice?
Oh, people noticed, or at least rumors started almost immediately. Even Saint-Marc, the jailer, mentioned in his report back to Louvois that there were whispers, speculation about his prisoner.
So the jailer himself is acknowledging the mystery.
Seems so. And over the next, 3 decades plus, this prisoner gets moved whenever Saint-Marc gets a new posting. From Pignerol to Aix, then to the island fortress of Ile Sainte-Marguerite, and finally ending up in the Bastille in Paris. Always under Saint-Marc's personal guard.
Always. Constant, direct supervision. It's even possible Saint-Marc kind of stoked the rumors himself, maybe to make himself seem more important, or maybe even as deliberate misdirection ordered from above. Who knows?
So this extreme secrecy for a supposed valet is the central puzzle. It just begs the question, who was he? And that lack of answers has fueled centuries of speculation, hasn't it? Some truly wild theories.
Absolutely wild. The information vacuum just sucked in every possible explanation, from the plausible to the totally outlandish. Where do you even start?
Well, the most famous one, the one everyone knows thanks to literature, has to be the twin brother theory.
Yes. The secret twin of Louis XIV himself. Popularized, of course, by Alexandre Dumas in his Musketeers saga.
So just quickly, what's the story there for anyone who hasn't read the book or seen one of the movies?
The basic idea Dumas used is that Louis XIV's mother, Anne of Austria, actually gave birth to twins. But, twins could mean a disputed succession down the line who was born first, even by minutes.
Chaos. Potential civil war, even.
Exactly. So to avoid that instability, the second twin, Philippe in Dumas' story, was whisked away, hidden, eventually imprisoned, masked, to conceal his existence and his identical face.
The motive makes a kind of dramatic sense, I guess. Prevent a challenge to the throne.
It does. But the WTF factor, as you say, is just immense. Think about it hiding a royal birth, let alone a twin, in 17th century France.
Yet weren't royal births basically public spectacles with tons of witnesses?
Precisely. They were incredibly public. Courtiers, officials, practically half the palace crammed into the room specifically to witness the birth and verify the heir's legitimacy, hiding a second baby in that scenario.
Seems like so impossible.
Highly improbable, bordering on impossible. There's absolutely zero contemporary historical evidence to support it. It's great fiction, fantastic drama, but almost certainly not history.
Marcel Pagnol had a variation too, didn't he, where the prisoner was the older twin.
He did, suggesting the prisoner was born first but hidden for some reason, maybe raised as this figure, James de la Cloche. But again, it's entirely speculative, no real proof.
Okay, so the twin theory, however iconic, is likely out. What about other royal connections? Maybe illegitimate ones. Voltaire seemed interested in that angle.
Yes, Voltaire, who was actually imprisoned in the Bastille himself later on, was one of the first to really publicize the mystery. He initially leaned towards the prisoner being an older, illegitimate half-brother of Louis XIV.
Fathered by someone powerful, like Cardinal Mazarin.
That was one speculation, or perhaps some other high-ranking nobleman. The logic is similar to the twin theory. Really, an illegitimate son, especially an older one, might have some kind of claim, or at least be an embarrassment, a potential rallying point for dissenters. So you lock him away.
Makes a bit more sense than hiding a twin, maybe.
Possibly. It feels slightly less logistically insane. People did suggest specific candidates, like Louis, Count of Vermandois. He was an illegitimate son of Louis XIV.
Ah, okay. So a known figure.
Known, yes. But the problem is, historical records show Vermandois died in 1683. The man in the iron mask lived until 1703. The dates just don't match up.
Another dead end? Any other illegitimate possibilities? Maybe involving the Queen?
There was speculation, particularly given the long period of estrangement between Louis XIV's parents, Louis XIII and Anne of Austria, before Louis XIV was born. Could Anne have had a child with someone else during that time?
Ooh, scandalous.
Very. But again, pure speculation. The level of secrecy, the lifelong imprisonment, the mask, it still feels like overkill, even for a royal bastard, unless there was something more. The power Louis wielded meant he could erase people, but it leaves us guessing.
Still a high WTF factor, then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving away from royalty, what about that Italian diplomat, Mattioli? He definitely angered Louis XIV.
Ercole Antonio Mattioli, yes, he's a strong contender in some historical arguments. He was an Italian count, a diplomat, involved in negotiations for Louis to acquire the strategic fortress of Casale.
And he double-crossed the king.
Big time. He basically revealed the secret negotiations. Louis XIV was furious and had Mattioli abducted illegally from Italian territory and imprisoned in Pignerol under Samar.
Okay, that fits the location and the jailer.
Uh-huh.
And didn't the prisoner get buried under a similar name?
That's the key piece of evidence cited. The burial name was recorded as Marchioli, very close to Mattioli. And supposedly, later French kings like Louis the Caulifat and Louis VI actually believed the prisoner was Mattioli.
So, case closed.
Not quite. The big problem, again, is the timeline. Most historical accounts suggest Mattioli died in prison in 1694.
And the masked man died in 1703, 9 years later.
Exactly. It's possible the records are wrong, or maybe the death date was faked for some reason, but it casts significant doubt on the Mattioli theory.
Pesky facts getting in the way of a good story. What about the other Eustache dogger? Nobleman one. Eustache dogger de Cavoy.
Right, there is another Eustache dogger floating around, this one a nobleman involved in some pretty serious scandals. Debauchery, black magic, even connected to the affair of the poisons, this huge scandal that rocked the French aristocracy.
Sounds like someone Louis might want locked up.
It's definitely the type. But the problem here is simpler. Records show this dogger, the nobleman, was already imprisoned in a different place, St. Lazare, when our masked man, supposedly also named Eustache dogger, first showed up at Pignerol in 1669.
So it can't be him. Two different doggers.
Seems overwhelmingly likely, yes. Which brings us back, perhaps, full circle.
To the original description, the valet. What do modern historians lean towards?
Many modern historians find the most plausible explanation circles back to a valet, potentially the original Eustache dogger named in that 1669 letter, but one who simply knew too much.
Knew too much about what, though? What could a valet know that warrants lifelong masking?
Well, speculation focuses on secrets involving powerful people. Maybe financial secrets concerning Cardinal Mazarin, who had amassed a huge, somewhat dodgy fortune, or perhaps details about secret diplomacy, like the Treaty of Dover between Louis XIV and Charles II of England, which had secret clauses concerning Catholicism in England, incredibly sensitive stuff.
So a low-ranking guy who overheard the wrong conversation or handled the wrong document.
Possibly. It aligns with the valet description, and it provides a rational, if ruthless, motive for the extreme secrecy. He wasn't important for who he was, but for what he knew. It fits the political realities knowledge could be deadly dangerous.
That does feel less fantastical, more grounded, maybe.
Yeah.
Still chilling, though. Any other truly bizarre ones we should mention? Like, way out there. Cromwell's son?
Oh yeah, the fringes get pretty wild. Son of Oliver Cromwell, the Duke of Monmouth, another claimant to the English throne. These get floated occasionally, but are usually dismissed pretty quickly because the timelines or known histories just don't fit at all.
Right. Okay. So we've waded through a sea of potential identities. Let's talk about the mask itself, because Man in the Iron Mask, that image is powerful. But It wasn't actually iron, was it?
Almost certainly not. That's one of the biggest misconceptions fueled by Voltaire and Dumas. The actual contemporary accounts, the few that exist, like from officers at the Bastille later in his imprisonment,
What do they say?
they consistently describe the mask as being made of black velvet. Velour in French.
Velvet. That's
Yeah.
considerably less menacing than iron.
It is, much less dramatic. So where did iron come from? Voltaire seems to be the first to mention an iron mask in the 18th century in his writings.
Why would he change it? Just for effect?
Probably. Iron sounds harsher, more permanent, more symbolic of tyranny and cruelty. It makes the story more shocking, more memorable. And Dumas, writing sensational historical fiction in the 19th century, definitely ran with the more dramatic iron version.
It definitely paints a different picture. Iron implies this brutal, heavy, inescapable thing. Velvet. Well, it's still a mask, still hiding identity, but it doesn't sound like torture in the same way.
Exactly. The symbolic weight is different. Iron suggests a deliberate, cruel erasure of the person. Velvet is about concealment. It's a fascinating example of how a detail can shape the entire legend.
Yeah, it really is. So considering all this, the theories, the mask, what actual hard evidence are we left with? It feels like smoke and mirrors.
It's incredibly frustrating for historians. The evidence is so limited. Louis XIV's government was big on secrecy and censorship.
And the lettre de cachet meant people could vanish without much paperwork, right?
Precisely. There wasn't always a need for public justification or detailed records if the king ordered someone imprisoned that way. It makes tracking individuals incredibly difficult.
What about official documents? Anything concrete?
We have that burial record from the Bastille Registry in 1703. It lists the prisoner, buried under the name Marchioli, as being about 45 years old.
Marchioli. Close to Medioli, but not quite. And about 45. That seems young, given he was first imprisoned in 1669.
It does seem young, potentially inaccurate, or maybe the name and age were deliberately falsified. We also have the correspondence between Saint-Marc and his superiors, like Louvois.
And what do those letters tell us?
They tell us about the prisoner, the need for secrecy, instructions for his care, transfers between prisons, mentions of his relative comfort sometimes, his piety, but never, ever his actual identity or the reason for it all.
So tantalizingly close, yet so far. And that core contradiction remains, described as only a valet, but treated with this intense security and relative respect.
That's the sticking point. The level of attention from a high-ranking jailer like Saint-Marc, the specific instructions from a minister, it just doesn't square with him being insignificant. It strongly implies his identity, whatever it was far more important than valet.
And that story about him trying to communicate, throwing something out the window.
Ah, the silver plate anecdote. Yeah, the story goes that while on Île Sainte-Marguerite, he supposedly scratched a message onto a silver plate and threw it out the window, where it was found by a fisherman.
What happened then?
The fisherman, being illiterate, supposedly took it to the governor, Saint-Marc, who asked him if he'd read it or shown it to anyone. When the fisherman swore he hadn't, Saint-Marc supposedly said, "It is lucky for you that you cannot read," and let him go.
Wow. If true, that really underscores the danger associated with his identity. But it's probably legendary, isn't it?
It's considered apocryphal by most historians. A great story, captures the desperation and secrecy, but no real way to verify it.
So we're left with fragments, contradictions, and this huge void where the answer should be. No wonder conspiracy theories have thrived.
Oh, absolutely. The mystery is fertile ground.
Yeah.
Theories range from the idea that his release would have just destabilized the entire monarchy,
How so?
maybe revealing some deep state secret, financial corruption, illegal acts by the king or ministers, or maybe something touching the royal lineage directly.
Which brings us back to those really WTF theories, like the one suggesting he was Louis XIV's real father.
Yes, that's one of the most extreme. That Louis XIII wasn't the father, but this hidden man was, making Louis XIV's claim to the throne illegitimate. Talk about undermining the Sun King.
That would be earth-shattering, if true.
Absolutely. Then you get even more outlandish ideas. He was a disgraced Moorish prince, a troublesome Jesuit priest who knew too much. There was even one connecting his lineage somehow to Napoleon Bonaparte centuries later.
Seriously, Napoleon.
Seriously. It shows how the vacuum gets filled with increasingly imaginative, if baseless, speculation. It highlights our fascination with the unknown, doesn't it? We need an answer, even a crazy one.
It's clear the story itself, the mystery, has had a huge life beyond historical debate. It's a cultural icon.
Immense cultural impact. And again, you have to give a lot of credit, or maybe blame, to Alexandre Dumas. His novel, The Vicomte de Bragelonne, where the man in the iron mask is a noble twin, really cemented that version in the public mind.
And the movies followed suit, mostly.
Mostly, yeah. There have been numerous film adaptations over the decades, and they almost always go for the drama of the twin brother plot. Think of that 1998 movie with Leonardo DiCaprio playing both Louis and Philippe.
Right, lots of swashbuckling, not much historical accuracy.
Exactly. It prioritizes the compelling story over the messy, uncertain historical reality. And because of Dumas and the films, Man in the Iron Mask has become this cultural shorthand, hasn't it?
Yeah, for hidden identity, political secrets, abuse of power.
Precisely. It pops up everywhere, inspiring other stories, used as a metaphor. Its cultural resonance is undeniable.
It really is amazing how a hysterical puzzle with so few definite answers can generate such a powerful and lasting myth. So, wrapping up our bizarre journey here, what's the big takeaway for you?
For me, it's how this story throws into sharp relief just how strange and, yes, unhinged history can sometimes be, far weirder than the neat narratives we often get. The sheer fact of this masked prisoner, held for decades in total secrecy, the WTF-ness of it, as you put it, that's what keeps it alive.
Despite all the digging, all the theories, we still don't really know.
We don't. We have clues, strong possibilities, but no smoking gun, no definitive proof.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the point. It's the blend of known fact, the tantalizing hints, and the wild speculation that makes it endure. It's the mystery itself that fascinates.
And it definitely makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other little footnotes in history books, seemingly minor events or people, might hide similarly bizarre, unbelievable stories, secrets just waiting to be stumbled upon?
Exactly. Maybe the real thrill isn't always in finding the final answer, but in appreciating how much we don't know and the enduring power of a great historical mystery.
A perfect, if unsettling, thought to end on. Thanks for taking us on this bizarre journey into the masked enigma.
A truly fascinating case. It never gets old.